what you might call a champagne problem. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And what in the fresh turkey hell are we dealing with here? My name is Shahir Dowd.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film Fast and Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw.
The FFPHS, the FFPuppers
will allow us to reintroduce ourselves.
My name is Hobbs.
And Shaw.
Am I Hobbs or the Shaw? Hey, look, let's
yeah.
get this out of the way first.
Okay.
All right. What is the distinguishing features between Hobbs and Shaw? Wait, Shaw is off the grid.
Deckard
right?
Shaw is off the grid and rogue MI6 agent played by Jason Statham. And Luke Hobbs, they call him both sort of each time, is the cop who always gets his guy.
Okay.
And is also The Rock, so he's built like a tank.
I think that's me. I think that's as far as this room goes.
I mean, you're a taller person than me.
I'm a bigger person. I'm from the islands. You know, I'm born in Fiji.
I mean, it's closer.
Yeah, it's pretty close.
Okay, so I'll be. And to be honest, I don't know. I guess I'll say I identify more with Shaw than Hobbs. However, I also do like Shaw more than Hobbs. But I think I'm more of a Jason Statham fella than a Dwayne The Rock Johnson fella. Though I do love The Rock.
Okay. Well, and then this, what we have to do now is also have our contract stipulate that we can't insult each other more than the other person.
Right. It needs to be very specific. Okay, so let's...
Have you heard about this?
Yeah, talk about it real quick for the people that haven't.
Okay, so I think it was the Wall Street Journal published an article about the peculiarities of the contract between Dwayne The Rock Johnson, Jason Statham, Vin Diesel, basically any of the major power players on this franchise.
All the dude bros,
about how much they can and can't be hurt within one of these films. And so the quote is, according to the producers and crew members on the films, Mr. Statham, 51 years old, negotiated an agreement with the studio that limits how badly he can be beaten up on screen. Mr. Diesel has his younger sister, producer on the film, police the number of punches he takes, and Mr. Johnson, 47, enlists producers, editors, and fight coordinators to help make sure he always gives as good as he gets.
So, that's hilarious. And also, it's actually, I think, poignant because let's go back to a couple weeks ago when we reviewed Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. There's a moment in that film where Leonardo DiCaprio's character is talking to, I forget what, a producer or a friend or something.
Kurt Russell.
Yeah. And it's to the point where he keeps taking villain roles and like he keeps sort of taking the roles that gets beat.
When he's talking to Al Pacino.
Yeah. And eventually they were talking about how like if you keep doing that enough, and I do think this is true, the audience being the world or the viewing population of it anyway, will start to see you as a loser.
As the villain.
As a villain, but also someone who can get beat up, as someone who can be defeated. And if your whole thing is, like, The Rock doesn't want to come off as someone who can be defeated. I know it's like a weird and like metatextual, and we all understand, well, hopefully we do, that these are characters in a film and the actors are playing them. But when it comes to these giant, dumb, fun, just testosterone nightmare films, I think you do need like that is an insurance policy on your career to be able to do these things at least as long as time will permit.
I don't disagree with that. There's obviously a metatextual thing in terms of like how star power is leveraged in these films. I think it's just funny though because essentially none of that is in service of the story. Right?
No, but this movie isn't in service of the story.
Well, we can get into that in a minute. But coming back to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, we got a couple of emails this week. A lot of people talking about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And I thought we'd just go through it. Now, I'm going to try to do this without any spoilers, but they're going to be minor plot points for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood that you would have heard of at this point. No spoilers, though.
Sure.
But we got an email in from Maya who's writing us in about Once Upon a Time. Was the film unnecessarily long? Absolutely. It felt sometimes unraveling in its pace by the end, and there's a sort of controversial element of sudden violence enacted upon women, which is something we've talked about, not just for this film, but also The Hateful Eight, which the audience was shocked by, but I almost reveled in the Tarantino-esque quality of it all. I will say that if Tarantino from now on trades the N-word for feet shots, I will gladly agree to this, because while the feet shots were a bit much. Not hearing the N-word felt even better. Anyway, I wanted to email you because I'm sort of overwhelmed by the Twitter discourse around this film. How do you turn the noise off? I love criticism. I love memes and fun asides on movies. I listen to your podcast for this reason. But I feel especially when the big movies come out, the Twitter discourse gets a little out of hand. Nobody is making anyone see this film. Nobody makes anyone want to see any film. Why see a film if you don't want to see it? I don't see films I don't truly want to see. How do you turn off the noise in the Twitter sphere?
Well, first and foremost, I want to go back to the feet question or the feet thing. Yeah. Everyone was talking about, again, on the Twitter discourse, so I will get back to that.
Yeah.
All of the feet shots.
Right.
I didn't notice a single one when I watched the movie. I was reading all about it. I was like, were there tons of feet shots?
Yeah.
I know Quentin Tarantino, historically has a thing for feet, which whatever, to each your own.
Yeah.
But like, I didn't notice. I was like, maybe the girls at the camp when they were sitting on the bench, like when he was walking by.
There was a noticeable foot shot when, for example, Sharon Tate goes to the movie. She puts her feet up on the seat in front of her.
Oh, I don't remember that.
And then there was a feet shot. These are only noticeable because we know there's a thing about Quentin Tarantino and his foot fetish.
Well,
and and again, if you look back to Kill Bill, there's feet shots in that. Death Proof, there's feet shots, and it's just a thing.
It's a thing he does. Okay, so with that,
it's like
mind,
Michael Bay and midriffs.
It's one of those
butts.
things. Michael Bay and butts.
Yeah.
Or the Fast and the Furious, the first 15 minutes of a Fast and Furious film, and butts.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, and so that's sort of an example of the Twitter discourse that like that's what everyone was talking about, and I was like, I didn't what? And there's a overwhelming sense, and I think in film critique on the internet, I would say that I think the reason why it's so prevalent is because when you tweet something about a movie,
right,
even if it's a minor thing, you have a short amount of time, so you can't make a huge long dissertation unless you do like a real long rant, which most people won't read. Yeah. You have to come up with some sort of hot take and try to make it funny as quick as possible. And then when you do that, inevitably it's designed to be, I'll use the term controversial in the sense that in this feet, for instance, people might say like, oh, I didn't mind the feet, or like way too much feet. And then people just start arguing about feet. And then you have a climate where one person started a discussion that everyone can kind of jump in on.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, why it gets so cloudy is like one person has a thing they saw, and due to the fact that all the other people saw the same thing and might have a different opinion, then just the noise echoes. It's an echo chamber of nightmare.
I think the interesting thing here is that oftentimes it might happen in the case where people actually haven't even seen the film and they're just responding to the actual Twitter discourse. Yep. I think it's Ron Johnson has a book called So You've Been Shamed on the Internet, about Twitter, about internet pylons, as he calls it. And it's really interesting. I think, I responded to Maya on this question. And, my point here is just to kind of, keep a healthy distance from whatever it is you're reading. You're welcome to enjoy whatever it is you're reading on the internet, but keep a healthy distance of skepticism. I think for me, the one thing that I think we talk about a lot on this podcast is it's something I guess maybe I've sort of figured out how to express this, but it's this idea that films are entirely made speculatively. Like you don't know whether the film is going to be good when you're making it. You're hoping it's going to be good. You have an idea for the film being good, but it's made entirely, like on the speculation that it will be good. You're exercising an idea. And film criticism, or the response to film, is done entirely retrospectively. So you're looking back at a film as though the decisions were kind of made. That was the only decision to be made. And I
think
Monday morning quarterbacking. Yeah, and I think all you have to do there is recognize that you have to have a healthy degree of respect for the fact that someone put this in front of you with this, put all their anxiety, fear, speculation onto the table in front of you, and no matter what you think of it, whether you like it or dislike it, just have a healthy degree of respect that someone put this in front of you and and does it without knowing entirely, like that if it's going to be good or not, or if it's going to work, it's always up in the air.
And going back to some reviews I was just checking out about Hobbs and Shaw.
We're not going to take that approach with this.
No. I mean, there's an interesting caveat to the thing you just said, and like what, for instance, if it's a independent film that like a small group worked on and like whatever, then like, you know, I feel, and say it didn't hit with me or whatever, like I'm not going to attack the film or whatever. Then there's these giant sort of just what I would consider maybe at one point a year or two before it was released, when it was just a glint in a writer's eye, they were making it, crafting it with love and whatever, but then it went through the wood chipper that Hollywood can be and comes out the other side as a death by committee sort of thing, and that happens. Then I don't want to ever sort of like really rally or insult it unless it's like something that is actually really insulting in content and like content. But then you have Hobbs and Shaw. And Hobbs and Shaw, well, we'll get into it. It's a weird hybrid of the two, I feel.
I think the contract we just discussed probably exemplifies everything you're just talking about.
Exactly. But to get through to the end of Maya's thing, how do you said have a comfortable basically relationship with how you ingest these things? I think that's very important. Also, I found, and this might be a little bit bubbling, but again, a lot of my Twitter is sort of media based as far as like films and games and stuff like that. I do not try to limit my sort of I guess political opinion stuff on Twitter, like what I read, right? Okay. But I have started to cultivate people in sort of film Twitter or film and game sort of stuff that I respect their opinions consistently. Like I've gotten rid of the people that are just like get me angry and make me want to respond.
Oh,
if that
is that
makes
why
sense.
You're not following me on Twitter anymore?
I don't listen. I don't want to talk about it. But but like it is incredibly helpful. There's some things that we shouldn't ignore when it comes to sort of like actual stuff that affects like true real life much more quickly than say a film review might.
Right.
Not to say the film can't affect real life. It's just it's a slower sort of cultural process. I found that my days are happier because normally. Case in point, Movie Bob. Love Movie Bob. I read his tweets. I watch his shows, etc. You should all do it. I've disagreed with him recently on a couple films, but I also respect his process and the respect for what he's doing, where I'm like, this is the kind of discourse I would like to have instead of like someone rambling, just being like, this movie's fucking shit. And you're like, cool.
Yeah.
Enjoy your 200K views, my friend. So that's sort of where I sit. I hope that's somewhat helpful.
I know we're going to get off into side channels. The only thing I would say there is that I like to keep a set of people on Twitter that I follow whose opinions I know I always disagree with and and just so I can see what the other side is thinking.
I do that with politics. I don't do that with movies. I'm too stressed out about the world in general to deal with that across the things I'm supposed to be doing for entertainment.
Gotcha. All right. One more email about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood from Will, who I believe is from Australia. We saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood over here with a packed audience. Pretty sure nobody in the crowd knew anything about the Manson and Tate murders, including me. I have been avoiding any news about the film, and that coupled with my sad lack of murder cult knowledge led to an why is he at this ranch question. Still managed to love the movie, though. I'm guessing that knowing about the Manson family made the violence towards the end slightly less questionable, maybe? So, yeah, this is an interesting, this is an interesting thing, which is that we're realizing that not a lot of people know about the Manson family murders.
Well, internationally.
Yeah, I mean, even nationally, people, there are emails floating around of people who, if you're born... like in the 80s or 90s, why would you know anything about the Manson family?
I guess Manson you start associating with Marilyn Manson because that'd be the only thing that's still current.
Why would you know anything about
Charles Manson died in prison, what?
Not long ago.
Not long ago.
But he hasn't been a figure of note for whatever that's worth for many, many years. And, again, it happened in 1969, I believe it was. And, essentially a small number of people got this happened in our review for Halloween, the updated Halloween, where one of the characters said, well, Mike Myers only killed like 3 people, back in the day. And, now we're dealing with people dying on a large scale all the time kind of thing. Why would you know anything about the Manson family?
It's actually really sad. One of the, we did an extra history on YouTube on the Boston Massacre. And a lot of the comments were, well, it was only 13 people. That's not a massacre.
Right.
And you're like, what?
Yeah. I mean, but I take complete empathy with that position of people walking in and not knowing, and it begs the question about this film: is there too much emphasis placed on like the cultural knowledge of the Manson family in order for it to work? Because if you don't know any of that stuff, yeah, there's a lot of question marks about like why are any of these characters doing any of these things, and why are we following this one character who has absolutely nothing to do with the plot?
I would go even beyond further. Like it just, if you don't really know about the Manson murders, it does break the plot. But if you also only know tertiary, oh yeah, the Manson was a cult, family was a cult that killed some people in Hollywood. You might not know it was Sharon Tate. Yeah. You might not know how that actually did sort of end the golden age of cinema. There's a lot there's a lot of prerequisite knowledge you need to actually get the point that Quentin Tarantino is trying to make. Luckily, he also basically made like 19 mini music videos that look really cool with Brad Pitt driving around 1969 LA. So it does, carry you. Yeah. But you might walk out with even more of a sense like I did, which was sort of like, is there a point to this? And then you actually have to think about it and do a little research, which is fun. Yeah. Again, like I go to a Quentin Tarantino movie thinking I might have to do that, and that's great, and I enjoyed the process. I go to a film like Fast and Furious Presents Hobbs and Shaw, just knowing everything will just be right there up on the screen,
served on you on a meaty silver platter. We have got another voicemail, but I'm not going to play this
voicemail.
A voicemail from Liam of the Oeuvre Busters podcast about this movie, but it's very spoilerific, so we will save that for another time, possibly at the end of an episode. Thank you for sending that in, Liam. Finally, one last tweet from our friend Baby Dread, who has gone through and listened to nearly every episode at this point, or is listening.
Baby Dread, we appreciate that, but I don't appreciate this tweet.
What? Which is R.E. Drive from Nicholas Winding Refn. I think this might be the first time I completely agree with Matt.
Hell yeah! What do you get when you deconstruct an 80s action movie? Nothing.
Well said. I'll take solace in the preposition there, which is this is the first time.
That's fine. I'll take it.
To go back.
But you know what? This is the one that matters to me.
This is the one that matters.
And I will say, I shit on Drive a lot, and I will continue to shit on Drive. Amazing cinematography, soundtrack is top notch. That is what I will say about that. But that film is a.
All right. So what in the fresh turkey hell are we dealing with here? I don't know if, again, maybe contextual knowledge that people don't know. I have not seen, I've seen one Fast and the Furious movie.
And it was for the show. You started with the Charlize Theron
I feel like I might have seen the first one when it came out, but I never really paid much attention to it.
Yeah.
I watched half of the second one this week in preparation for this episode.
You watched Fast and Furious 2?
Yeah, Too Fast, Too Furious.
That's literally going to not help you at all.
I know. I started watching and I was like, this is not going to help me in any context. I realized I should have started at Fast 5
or 6.
4 or.
I think Rock comes in on 5.
Okay.
I think.
All right.
I think. And then Jason Statham becomes a villain in 6, and then a bit of a hero in 7 and 8.
Write us in at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at onlymoviepod with your full annotated history of the Fast and the Furious franchise.
I do know it goes 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 3, 7, 8. Hobbs and Shaw.
This is Justice for Han that you're describing.
Yeah.
It's basically you're trying to re-anchor the whole thing.
Well, they do. I'm not doing it. They do it.
Okay.
They've said that's the official timeline.
The timeline also doesn't make any sense. Is that right? Not a lot of stuff makes sense in this universe to me.
But the universe itself is set up to not make sense, so therefore, does it all make sense?
So this is a spinoff, obviously, with The Rock and Jason Statham's character. We're not seeing a lot of our few franchise favorites, including Mr. Vin Diesel, who's no longer isn't in this film. But this what started as like
is he your favorite? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Is Vin Diesel my favorite?
You just said our favorites, and then you listed Vin Diesel and no one else.
Who is the
Paul Walker,
Ludacris,
R.I.P. Ludacris, Tyrese,
Michelle Rodriguez, Isn't Wonder Woman in this as well?
Oh, Gal Gadot, yeah.
She's in this as well. Yep. There's another character, and Charlie's there. I don't know. I don't know. I do not know.
I would argue that my favorites are in this film.
Oh, really? Oh, so this is a distillation of all the things you like of the Fast and the Furious franchise into one single entity.
Actually, 100%, because like I'm not a big car guy,
right?
And these films have morphed from like street racing crime, like in a city, into world-saving operations where they race supercars across ice in Siberia, and a submarine breaks through and chases them, and The Rock literally throws a torpedo at it.
He's also superhuman at some point, right? Like he's been shot by. I remember in the Fate and the Furious, he gets shot. I'm guessing they're rubber bullets, but he just kind of keeps walking like it was.
He also like heals up his arm after it's broken and cracks out of his cast.
Right. Okay.
So yeah.
Well, tell us what Hobbs and Shaw is about.
Oh, well, I'm not going to tell you. I think I should let IMDb tell you.
Okay.
Lawman Luke Hobbs and outcast Deckard Shaw form an unlikely alliance when a cyber-genetically enhanced villain threatens the future of humanity.
Future of humanity?
Wait, I want to go back to cyber-genetically enhanced.
Cyber. Are they trying to say cybernetically?
I don't know, but it
is that
says
just too close to
cyber-genetically.
Is that just too close to the Terminator franchise?
I don't. I mean, Idris Elba in this film is hilariously wonderful.
It's weird that the fact that there is a cyborg human in this movie is kind of like a entirely, it's almost not secondary but almost tertiary plot point.
So for whatever reason, I go back when I heard the plot of this movie, and by the way, the trailers, if you haven't watched them, you just know the whole movie. But there's a film franchise from the 80s, Shahir, and I think there's 5 or 6 of them. I only watched the first 3.
Is it okay? I'm putting the name that I think you're talking about in my head.
Okay.
Or should I write it down on a piece of paper?
Write it down on a piece of paper real quick. But I bet you it's wrong because it's just not. It's not going to be something that I think you are familiar with. But here we go.
Whoa.
What I have to just kill time for the audience while you write down.
Yeah, okay, go.
Okay, it's the American Ninja series.
Oh, God, no.
Yeah, what'd you write?
Universal Soldier.
Oh, also true.
Yeah.
But the American Ninja series is a just terrible B movies. It's like this. It's like this total whitewashy white savior sort of thing, where like this white military guy learns all the secrets of martial arts and blah blah blah. But in the
Michael Dudikoff, I actually have seen 1 or 2 of these. I think I've seen the first one.
But in the second one, he goes and he fights this ninja clan again. But they've cyber enhanced them to turn their muscles to steel.
Ooh, steel muscle. So when you punch them,
and for whatever reason, when I started seeing like all these ads and seeing Idris Elba getting all zapped up with cyber, I was like, oh, it's American Ninja.
It's American Ninja. What is the sequel called? The sequel is called The Confrontation.
Yeah. So anyway, sorry. Deep cut for my horrible 80s film.
We should just do that movie.
American Ninja 2.
So again, I have no contextual knowledge, which is interesting because what it means is the ploy of low expectations comes into play here, which is that I have very low expectations when I go to see this movie. I doubt very much that I would pay to see this movie if it wasn't for this podcast. But what that meant was the low expectations actually played in its favor.
Oh yeah, they often do.
Which is that I didn't. I have an issue with this film. One, that it's absolutely ridiculous.
But
that's fine.
That's more of a fact for me and not an issue.
Yeah, it's totally fine. This movie is completely ridiculous. Plot points that are set up in this movie make no sense and are immediately disproven with nonsensical storylines. I will say this. I found that what I enjoyed about this is the type of action that we were getting from scene to scene was varied enough that I was never quite bored with the action. Which I
you have action fatigue a lot.
Yeah, which is the problem that I had with John Wick, for example. Yeah. Also directed by David Leitch, who directed this film.
No,
or have they split up now? It's David Leitch and his partner. I'm pretty sure he directed John Wick 3, didn't he? And Atomic Blonde.
He was a producer on John Wick. Okay. He directed Atomic Blonde and Deadpool 2.
Okay, yeah. So I thought the action was varied enough so that you kind of got a sense of everything that was happening was interesting and new, and I enjoyed that. I will say the problem is if any movie wears out has a problem with wearing out its welcome, it's this one. This movie is literally half an hour too long.
See, I disagree.
Oh wow, this movie is half an hour too long, and any goodwill I have by just going, yeah, like I can see this being kind of entertaining and fun and sort of slapsticky kind of bro comedy across the planet. It all gets worn out by the fact that it is too long.
I agree the film has problems. I think we're going to have maybe multiple different problems than each other, and then also one exact same problem.
Okay.
But what I will say is this movie, before we get into spoilers and we get into all those juicy problems.
Yeah.
This movie falls into the category for me of perfect place, perfect time.
Okay.
Who are we
talking about? You or
me? For me.
Yeah.
So listeners, I don't know if you've ever experienced this or Shahir, you as well, but like when the fates sort of align and timing works out perfectly, and then everything sort of works out, and then you're just at the movies.
Right.
And by that I mean I was in Indianapolis for Gen Con for extra credits. We were doing a panel, which was amazing. And if you were there or if you whatever, I hope you had a great Gen Con and hope you enjoyed the panel. But we were finishing up. Half of our team had already left, and it was me and two of my team members just eating dinner at a restaurant. And I have the flight early in the morning and whatever. And we were just shooting the shit and having a good time. And we were probably just going to call it an early night. And then I remembered that we are probably going to do the episode for the podcast. And I was like, oh, I wonder if there's any movie theaters like in walking distance, because I'd never been to Indianapolis before, which is also an awesome town.
Yeah.
And I look, and within 0.1 miles, at a museum, there's an actual IMAX theater.
Okay.
Not only that,
you saw this in IMAX?
Yeah. Not only that, the tickets were like $15.
Oh, that's a premium discount.
Yeah,
you got in good. How could you not go?
So
you should buy extra tickets.
I go. I'm like, guys, do you want to go see Hobbs and Shaw at the IMAX? And both of them are like, we've never seen any of these films before, because it's definitely not their bag.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't think it matters. And they're like, okay. So we all go. Not only that, so we walk there. It's a short walk from the restaurant where we're at.
Yeah.
And I wish I remembered the museum's name, but it's the one with the IMAX theater in Indianapolis. Okay. It is the most beautifully landscaped thing, like all around it. There's like a man-made river moat thing and like 5 different monuments to stuff. And it was a part of the city that I'd never seen before. We walk in, the museum is obviously closed and empty, but all the doors are open because people are still going to this movie.
Yeah.
We go in, whatever. It's an actual IMAX theater. I thought it was going to be like a Limax for the price.
No, it's a real. Usually at museums.
It's real. And I was like, Hobbs and Shaw at the museum. I was like, okay.
Hobbs and Shaw at the museum.
That's the sequel.
That should be, yeah.
So we get in, and it's literally us and like one other couple. And the film just washed over us entirely. Like, we were laughing. We were having a good time. I think that's why. Maybe I would have thought it was too long had all of those stars not aligned.
Yeah.
Because holy shit, that was just the perfect movie-going experience. It was out of the blue. Yeah. It was super easy. It was beautiful to look at and experience. And I was with people that knew it was as ridiculous as I knew it was and had different perspectives. And we came out laughing, and we like walked around for like 45 minutes after, just talking about the dumb shit we just saw. Okay. And it was just like, I don't know.
But you're talking about the experience more than you're talking about the movie.
Well, we're going to get to the movie. And the movie has problems. There's no question. But that's why I said I think this movie hit me at perfect place, perfect time. So I just wanted to preface my what might come off as undying love for this film has a lot of sort of like perfect coincidence to get me into that mind state.
So the opposite experience for you would be if you realized you had to see it for the podcast, you were on a flight the next morning at like 4 a.m. for some reason. It was 11 o'clock at night, and the movie theater was like 20 miles away, and you had to drive, and there was no parking, and the tickets were $25, and it was packed with people who were on their cell phones, and you couldn't get, and the popcorn had a mouse in it.
Oh, the last part might have been cute, but the rest of it, yeah.
Yeah, so if that was the scenario, the exact same movie would be like, fuck this movie, right?
I wouldn't be fuck this movie. I just wouldn't have enjoyed it as much, I think.
Right.
It just would have been like, oh, is this over?
Yeah. So the context is helping you in this.
I think the context is
as it is helping me in terms of like, low expectations.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get into spoilers.
That's a 30-minute preamble. I think we can talk about the film now.
We can just talk specifically about spoilers. Obviously, as this franchise has kind of gone on, I think there's been a parallel line drawn between Mission Impossible and the Fast and the Furious franchise, right? Like they're basically running on two similarly direction train tracks at this point. And this even features Vanessa Kirby from Mission Impossible Fallout, or like who has a much smaller role in Fallout, but kind of like is in between two male characters as she was in Fallout. The interesting thing for me is that this movie kind of in Mission Impossible 2, which was essentially kind of a remake of Alfred Hitchcock's Notorious, they added this MacGuffin of a disease. They called it the Chimera disease in there. And it was essentially the same plot point happens, which is that it gets injected into a person, they have to extract it from the person.
Sure.
And this movie takes that plot, like essentially, if you're thinking about going from Notorious, which had a MacGuffin of a different type in that film.
Notorious?
Alfred Hitchcock's film.
Oh,
Notorious,
yes.
So Mission Impossible 2 is kind of...
Sorry, I was like, was there a Mission Impossible Notorious?
That's Mission Impossible 2.
Okay.
Yeah, is Mission Impossible Notorious. And it takes the MacGuffin, which is essentially, from anyone who's done film studies, MacGuffin is basically a central plot point which all the characters care about, but is essentially redundant to your experience as an audience. It doesn't really matter what the thing is.
There's actually, I just watched a beautiful thing on Nando V Movies. I don't know if you're familiar
I don't know
with
what that is.
about how that actual definition of a MacGuffin, even based on Hitchcock, is wrong.
Oh.
I don't remember the exact sort of words for it, but search for that on the internet if you're interested. It was something, because I'd always thought that we've talked about that a million times. It was something I wanted to bring up, but it was something, and it's something along the lines of it's not a MacGuffin if it still drives the plot. Because of the way because that was a term that Hitchcock coined,
or used, yeah.
Well, I'm sorry to not have that information at my fingertips. I wasn't prepared for that. But check that out, because the definition of MacGuffin is actually super weirdly intricate and interesting.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying. It's an object or a thing that will hopefully move the plot forward or make the characters want to do a thing.
I think there's been a couple of papers written, interestingly, about the idea that the MacGuffin has a psychological importance for the actual thematic resonance of the film. So that's maybe what they're talking about. But essentially, the way Hitchcock used to use it as a MacGuffin is this object that all the characters want to get, but it really doesn't matter what the object actually is. Like, it could be anything. In Pulp Fiction, we don't even see what the object is that all these characters are trying to get, which is this essentially is just a light in a briefcase. We never know what it is. In the 39 Steps, for example, Alfred Hitchcock film, they're trying to get this code for for something. Nobody knows what it is. It doesn't really matter. In Mission Impossible 2, the Chimera disease doesn't really matter. It's just this thing that everyone's trying to get. In this one, it doesn't really matter, but it kind of does, because the mechanics around how this plot point is used are so ridiculous that it kind of gets into this thing where you're like, wait a minute. If everyone's talking, the best way you can use a MacGuffin is to just introduce it and never really mention it again, or never really mention the details of it. But this film starts to get into real heavy details.
I'm starting to remember things too. Like, for instance, some people call the sled, Rosebud, a MacGuffin. It's not, because what the object actually is has incredible importance to the rest of the film. It's just you find out what it is at the end.
Yeah, the sled and Rosebud is a slightly different.
But I know. But then, for instance, in this, and believe me, I'm not comparing. Well, I guess I am. No, it's just
Hobbs and Shaw versus Citizen Kane. Gotcha.
Perfect. Exactly. But double feature movie night. But the virus in this film actually does have to do with the plot as they tell us. The goal of the secret eugenic cyber cult, which has a name that I couldn't even pronounce after they said it 9 times.
Eaton?
It's just like, it's weird.
I because it sounds like Eton, which is the famous school in London where all the elites and royals went. That's the only way I remember it. And I thought it was kind of like this sort of elitist thing.
Right. The virus that they're doing is to actually help their entire goal along, which again, it's a super bland nonsense reasoning, but it's to kill all the, quote, weak people to help the other people be
Here's
stronger.
a question for you. Do you know, is this might be the sort of steel muscles analogy again?
Sure.
Who is strong enough to withstand a liquefaction of their body? Like, what is the definition of strong or weak in that parameter?
I think how they were saying it, at least how I read it, maybe I just have like my own internal script for all these dumb movies that I've seen for a million times. But the way I read it was, like the virus would kill people that were, say, prone to cancer or prone to different genetic diseases, to make sure that the people that survived would not, like, no one, because remember they said when it was in her body, when it was in Vanessa Kirby's body, that it wasn't programmed, and therefore if it died when it was in it, it would affect everyone.
Right.
So including the good guys, the bad guys, and everybody.
So they were going to take it and reprogram
They were going to take it and reprogram it.
Okay. And they haven't heard of antibacterial resistance at any point.
I don't think this was it's not bacteria, it's a virus.
I know, but they have never heard of antiviral resistance or antibacterial.
Well, there's no such thing as antiviral.
Well, but they're basically saying that we're gonna wipe off disease by taking away all the people who could be susceptible to these diseases, not thinking about the theory of evolution or evolutionary theory, which is that diseases that are resistance would pop up, new diseases that are resistance would be popping up.
100%. But I think that they
didn't pay attention at Eton, obviously.
No. Here's the deal. They actually did, because but they're a doomsday cult, right? Like that's what doomsday cults do. Like they think that they've got all the answers, and they're gonna say they win.
Yeah.
Something else is gonna happen. It's not just gonna be like, well, now we're all perfect.
Right. It's I mean, at least with Thanos, for example, his was just all chance, right? It was just like there was no like.
He left it up to the universe in a certain sense. Yeah.
The interesting thing then is, okay, so now this disease has been injected into Vanessa Kirby, which is something you see in the very first few minutes of this film. We realize that a character played by Idris Elba is out to get her. For some reason, she is now framed for stealing the virus.
Because also the eugenic cyber cult, and I think that phrase is wonderful.
Yeah.
It's just as a generic bad guy.
Yeah.
Eugenic cyber cult.
Yeah. And also bad guy.
Yeah. Self-proclaimed bad guy. The fact that she basically, Idris Elba's on the way to steal it, and his name is Brixton, by the way, and Vanessa Kirby's name is Hattie.
Yeah.
And she was an MI6 agent. She was tasked to get it. She couldn't get it out, and she knew she'd have to like get away with it quick. So she injects it into herself, and she gets away. Now Brixton and the eugenics death cult decide that the only way they can get her is if they hack, because they have like access to hacking everything, right?
So they frame her.
So that then they can get her.
Right. So they have complete control of the media.
Yep.
Okay. That seems like a pretty powerful thing. So you want complete control of the media and the ability to kill people.
I think the virus itself was like, just get it done quicker. Like, because they could have just done what they were doing if they spent like 20 years controlling the media.
Right.
But instead.
Yeah, and so now the CIA and MI6 decide we need to get this back. They seem to know, or do they believe that Vanessa Kirby's character is? They
think at this point in the film that she has gone rogue and stolen the virus.
Okay, all right. So they're completely manipulatable.
Oh, 100%
by the media that Eaton owns.
Also, side note, I don't normally go. I was thinking about this a lot, but Vanessa Kirby, I think, is my number one sort of favorite action woman currently.
Action woman
in Hollywood. I think this, she didn't really do much of it in Mission Impossible. She was sort of just like the queen pin in a way. Holy shit. In this, I feel like again, we'll get into how the action is sort of cut and portrayed in a little bit, but I felt like her action scenes were like legitimately some of the best.
Okay. So when she fights The Rock?
When she fights anybody, because it seems like she or her stunt double can do a lot of the moves in one take.
Okay.
Whereas that was an issue I had with some of the later action sequences with other people. Anyway, I just shout out to Vanessa Kirby because holy shit, she was doing work.
Okay. And then so the CIA and the MI6 enlist both a rogue agent, which I don't know why you would do that, but maybe Jason Statham is just the best at what he does.
He's a champagne problem.
But here's a story point that I thought was really interesting, because I was like, okay, I understand why the CIA enlists The Rock, right? Like, he's the best at what he does.
Always gets his man.
Always gets his man. I have another issue with this that I'm going to come back to at some point.
I'll defend all of them.
But then they also enlist Jason Statham's character to do the same thing. But they seemingly don't realize or know that Vanessa Kirby and Jason Statham are siblings. And I was like, wouldn't it be a better story point and more organic if basically Jason Statham is called to action not by the MI6, but just because his sister is in trouble?
100%. The issue is, and it's funny because the trailers ruined this instantly, is I was watching for this. They don't mention that she is related to Jason Statham until The Rock like accuses or says something like,
"Oh, you're going to sleep with her?" Or something?
Like there's like that. It's supposed to be like a twist moment, but it's in every trailer that they're related. Yeah. So it's like the movie itself was holding on to that for like a interesting sort of moment, and the ad campaign was like, nope.
Yeah, I all I'm talking about is from a storytelling point of view, because then his character essentially organically comes in. And also, I guess maybe this is that thing of like contractual obligations, because now they're kind of pitted as equals in the film. Like they're both agents, they're both coming in to try and deal with this thing. But as a storytelling point of view, it's like, okay, you can have The Rock be the superhero agent, and now he has to deal with this other guy who he despises, who has to come into the story because his sibling is in trouble. Right? Like it seems to make more sort of natural story sense.
100%. I think they wanted to save it. I think the reason they didn't do that, even though I think it would have been tighter, is they wanted that moment for a surprise, which of course was never a surprise because of the way trailers are made.
Okay, yeah. So that's the issue there. It's fine. The issue that I have though is that this movie is made up of no less than 3 ticking time bombs. None of which make any sense in the film.
Go for it. Hit us.
So the first one is the fact that she has 72 hours, 3 days, before this virus will essentially be released within her body and turn her to soup, but also everybody to soup. So they enlist an agent from the United States who has to take an 11-hour flight from the United States to London in order to start this, versus taking MI6 agents who are in the region in order to do it. So no, that's fine. That's fine.
I mean, and now I'll just sort of do these as you go. I think that they probably do have agents going after this while he's flying over,
right?
But he's their insurance policy.
So he's just the insurance policy. So he's 11 hours there. Then they fly to the Ukraine, which I did the math. It's a 3-hour flight.
Okay. I love that you did the math.
Yeah. So they're 11 hours from Los Angeles to London, 3 hours from London to Russia, and then for some reason at the end of this movie, Hobbs decides that they need to protect this virus by flying across the planet. It's a 20-hour flight from Russia to Samoa. So of the 72 hours that they have 30. They've used 36 just by being on plane.
Well, listen.
On being on populated commercial airlines.
You know why they have to do that? Because there's still now, once Deckard Shaw and Luke Hobbs get involved in this cyber eugenics cult, hacks the system and makes them rogue agents.
Right.
And they can't go anywhere, so they have to fly commercial and they have to get off the grid.
So you take the virus
and
that's going to kill people.
Here's the deal. They have the broken machine to get the thing out of her, right?
Yeah.
And only one person off the grid could possibly do that. And
it's
of course,
a mechanic in Samoa.
Of course, it's The Rock's brother.
Yeah. Of course, because that makes sense. It's familiar.
But listen, that's why they're taking all these flights. They have no choice.
So 72 hours, let's deduct 30 of them for flight time, which means they're basically doing, this whole movie takes place essentially in a day and a half.
During the daytime scenes, yeah.
Yeah. A day and a half is the whole, like every fight sequence that happens is a day and a half. They're not sleeping in this period, obviously, of course, as well. Then there's a second ticking time bomb when they get to kind of, quasi Chernobyl, where they set a 45-minute ticking clock.
A literal time bomb.
A literal time bomb that's going to explode the whole thing. But at some point they get knocked out in the middle of it. We have no idea how long that knockout was, but when they get knocked out, 2 trucks are brought in and they're tied up and then they're strapped to this thing. I was like, where is the timer kind of going? And the timer, there's never a point at which there's a thing in this film, which is that they set up timers, but they only in one scene do they kind of like refer back to that timer. And that's the final sequence where they kind of literally have a 30-minute timer before this virus has to be extracted from the body. Otherwise, they kind of set up a timer and then just play out the scene as is. And then at the end, the timer comes back and does what it's supposed to do. There's even another scene in this film where Jason Statham goes to Vanessa Kirby's apartment and the whole setup of the scene is that there is a grenade at the top of the film, at the top of the scene, and for some reason they just sort of forget about that grenade, and then at the very end of the scene, someone throws a grenade, and then he just kind of clicks it back into place.
He steps over it. Then when they come in, it clicks out.
Yeah, but it was like, oh, wouldn't the interesting tension of the scene be if he knew that there's a grenade there?
He did know there was a grenade there,
and he was trying to make sure that nobody stepped on the grenade. Instead, they just have a fight scene, right? Like,
well, because he didn't expect people to come in after him. He was doing his whatever, MI6X reconnaissance or whatever. So he stepped over all the booby traps. And then when people came to kill her and found him, they hit all the booby traps, and he had to dispatch them before the grenade went off.
Right, but he's not. The scene just plays out as a fight scene. We never refer back to the grenade or anything.
They click it. There's a very quick fight scene
at the very end of the scene.
And then he puts the pin back.
At the very end of the scene, suddenly the grenade comes into play.
I think there's a lot of things that are wrong with this film. I think the three things you listed in the context that this film presents itself in are not issues.
Really? So no, because the whole thing I was in there going was like, wait, you got 72 hours to do this thing.
But it makes sense.
I'm just saying, like, the classic Hitchcock thing is suspense is when you know there's a bomb underneath a bus, and you're worried about the bomb underneath the bus. Surprise is when the bomb just goes off. Mm-hmm. And I think what happens here is they set up like the suspense element, but then they just do the surprise side of it.
So let's take all three of your examples. The first one being the virus. That is supposed to be the suspense. And the suspense doesn't really click in until the very end when we actually have counter timers sort of going while there's a giant fight scene happening.
It doesn't seem like they're too concerned. Like they stop to have drinks at one point,
because they're waiting for their flights. And then the second one being the bomb that they set up at the Russian military base. That's something I didn't ever feel like that was like I felt like that was just, I guess, an action movie shorthand. That was just like, oh, the base is going to blow up when they're done.
Right.
Like, I don't care.
When they're done.
Yeah, but I don't care.
Yeah.
Because that's not, like, that's the way that they even shot that, or the way they presented it in editing, never made it like it was supposed to be like what about the bomb? Like, they never did that. They never hinted at that for me, so therefore, in my head, I was like, oh, okay, well, that's just going to be the finisher.
Did you get the experience, though, when I was watching that, where the whole scene was taking place, like there's the fight scene with the guys in the hallway, and The Rock is fighting this one big giant dude. They get caught by Idris Elba's thing. Then he's doing his whole speech and he's doing the charge, and it's like the 5 charge, like how many shocks can you take kind of thing. And then they leave, and then all of a sudden, oh yeah, there was a bomb here. That's right, and it just explodes. Yeah. Like there's no sense of like,
well, they do have it. They have a bit of an action scene when they get to the trucks before that they break out, and then it starts exploding as they're driving away. It actually doesn't explode until it starts exploding.
But you know what I mean? Like it's just sort of
it didn't matter to me because
it didn't matter that they set up the bomb.
Well, it mattered only because you knew it was going to explode eventually. It was never presented in a way to induce suspense, and therefore I was not disappointed when it didn't induce suspense.
Okay.
And then the third one being the grenade, I think that's the most.
No. So that was actually just one I mentioned as well.
Oh, do you have another one?
Yeah, because this is the movie of ticking time bombs, which is that at the end of the movie, after Hobbs's brother has found the best mechanic on the planet to repair this like piece of high tech machinery.
It was him. It was Hobbs's brother.
Yeah. She has a 30-minute timer on this like sort of seemingly delicate procedure but she can run around and fight with it. But that one kind of plays out, but then it doesn't really matter because then it just ends and the timer's out.
Just end. They spoiler alert, they win.
Right, but the timer just runs out, right?
Yeah, because it finishes before her. But that timer finishes before her actual death clock finishes.
Right. So the issue there, the stress that they're all dealing with,
is that process needs to finish before the virus dissolves in her body and kills everybody.
Right. So wouldn't you, in that scenario, keep her away from the fight?
Oh, 100%.
But listen, the timer just makes no sense.
They have their backs against the wall, Shahir. They're outgunned, and they have to just fight.
Guns.
Yeah, they're literally outgunned. They don't have guns, and they need to fight with sticks and exploding barrels of gasoline and nitrous tanks.
There's a Samoan war. It's not just
clubs.
Sticks. Yeah, they're pretty hefty. And I will say, for me personally, the thing I really dug about the film was when they went to Samoa.
I mean, that was cool. See, so this is something that I want to give. I feel like we've been minorly shit talking this series, this entire podcast. Something that the Fast movies have done, I think, honestly, since 5, has been presenting us with at least new looking and feeling action set pieces.
Right.
Oftentimes superhero films, for instance, oftentimes like the end fight, at least maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, all of them were big beams shooting into the sky,
Right.
and like a monster fighting around it and have to throw a thing into the beam or like stop the portal, and it's all like yeah, we get it. This series, including this film, start taking all of these action sequences in just very interesting locations and directions.
Yeah.
I mean, this film alone, you have a street race sort of, or not a street race, but like a thing through the London streets, which is, I thought, even though it was full of CG, was still really fun. Idris Elba's kit transforming motorcycle,
which actually had the transformer noise in it. I was like, what?
Dope.
Yeah. I did like that as well. I liked the little car slide underneath and his bike rotates.
Yeah. It was
cool.
very cool.
Yeah.
You have the scene even before that, I think, where they jump out of the skyscraper in the elevator.
This is what I mean. The film had enough varying action sequences where I was like,
and then the end when they're at Samoa is something completely different. Now, in the trailer it gave away the plot point that they don't have the guns anymore because his mother gave them away, and there's this giant technological force coming at them. But they did have a plot point where all of the guns, even characters trying to use enemy guns, wouldn't let them do it because they have ID chips in the guns because they're a cyber eugenics cult.
Yeah.
So
which Vanessa Kirby can just hack.
Well, I mean, listen,
she has the gun.
If we're going to start complaining about movie hacking now, then we're going to be here for a long time.
Yeah.
But she hacks it so that then they can't use their guns for like, I think
6 minutes.
6 minutes. And so they can have
6 minutes within the 30 minutes that she has
as much
so
damage,
this timer.
as much damage as possible in the 6 minutes. And that makes it so cool, especially. Sorry, go.
No, I look. I'm from the Pacific Islands. I was born in Fiji, so just seeing the Samoan Islands, being represented, and the fact that he comes out wearing a sulu, which is it's kind of like a skirt.
The red thing.
Yeah, it's a skirt for men that you wear, and like them doing a haka and them having like the tribal thing. I was like, that's cool. I'm enjoying the fact that and they sort of pit technology against like old school, and I really dug that, and that has this sort of thematic resonance in terms of like the history of those eras and post-colonialism. The idea in New Zealand, for example, Maori warriors were able to fend off attacks from guns because they were so more adept at
hacking. They were adept at hacking chips in the guns.
Yeah, computer chips in their guns. There's a really great Billy T. James joke where Billy T. James is a famous New Zealand comedian, and they go back to that period where like where the colonists are coming and they're trying to trade, and they come up to Billy T. James, who's a Maori warrior, and they say, "Oh, we can give you weapons, guns, and stuff." And Billy T. James turns around and goes, "Haven't you got any money, bro?" And it's just like I love this sort of this idea of being well aware of the limitations that they had, but being able to fight against it. I think that was really cool. And it's like, and The Rock is Samoan, so he carry like in Polynesian culture, there's a phrase called mana. Which is basically how much respect a person carries, and how much a person is able to represent their tribe to the outside world. And The Rock as a person, as a human being, I think carries a lot of mana for the Pacific Islands.
How is that spelled?
M-A-N-A.
Okay, so actually, that's interesting.
It's been used in Dungeons and Dragons, or
kind of. So in multiple tabletop or video games, mana. Or it's not mana. Well, I guess it is mana. We just say mana because we have weird, dumb accents. But that's sort of like your magical pool of energy,
right? Yeah, I think it's a similar concept.
That's interesting. I didn't know that's where it came from.
Yeah. It's actually woven into Polynesian life like quite a lot. It's kind of basically how respected and how much authority and how much capability a person has is their mana, and it's also tied to how good how good a person you are.
Okay.
It's not just not just how good at things you are, it's how good a person you are.
It's tied literally to how many times you are contractually okay with getting punched in the face, as long as you punch someone else in the face.
Yeah, and to see The Rock kind of bringing the Fast and the Furious franchise back to into Samoa and like representing like with respect, and kind of still having fun with it. I think that was really cool. It comes way too late in the movie. Like the movie is two hours and something, and I was like, if this could all come under 2 hours.
The most boring parts for me was the Russian infiltration section.
Yeah, it just goes on
because that's the thing that feels the most samey to most action films.
Yeah,
with the exception of there's one shot in this film. It was in the trailers, and I was happy that it was a little bit longer in the film. That like was like the most exciting shot for me in this movie, and it's when Jason Statham and Vanessa Kirby are in like the dune buggy thing, and they ride out the window and they're doing a flip and they're shooting, and like her legs are like flying in the air because she's not wearing a seatbelt. She's just like holding on to the roll cage.
Yeah,
and like they use the bottom chassis of the thing to stop helicopter fire or some shit, and I was just like, this is why I'm here.
Right. And it's very, again, we're not just doing this. They're not just doing the same trick to get out of scenarios. They're doing, they're bringing in different skills, and I really actually enjoyed that, and that did play for me, and I think if it was just a little bit shorter, I think this movie would have been great.
I have two gripes.
Okay.
The first is I thought that the forced
romance.
No, I don't care about the romance or whatever. I mean, that's, I don't know, whatever, sure. And you know what? I'll even say that the romance for it was actually a little bit sweeter than I thought it was going to be. Basically, Vanessa Kirby and The Rock's character sort of eventually kind of sort of fall for each other. And there's a lot of like longing eyes from both of them. And of course, you have Jason Statham's character be like, don't touch my sister, and like that sort of thing. But then the moment where they actually like have a kiss, it's like a real quick one right before the final fight, and The Rock even says like, do you want to do that again? And she goes, no, maybe tomorrow.
Now this is all going to come down to personal preference for me, but there's something about The Rock, I guess it's similar to Arnold Schwarzenegger, it's also really similar to Tom Cruise, where I see them often as asexual beings.
Interesting.
And so when they get into romantic scenarios, something in my brain just doesn't click.
I don't think, okay, let me put it this way. I agree with you when it's like a real like sexy romantic thing, right? Like I can't sort of get into that. Yeah. But this felt weirdly, and this is gonna be the dumbest thing I think I say this entire podcast, which get ready. Felt like almost like a teenage sweetness to it. Like there was like it felt way more innocent than the rest of this film feels.
Yeah.
And so I was like, like it was that was fine. No, the problem I had was the banter back and forth between Hobbs and Shaw, and how much the film tried to sort of revel in it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I've ever seen something this dichotomous in any movie.
Right.
The script and the banter is terrible. Like the insults they're throwing back and forth, 9 times out of 10 aren't even funny.
Right.
But then you have the counterbalance of these two men who have an incredible charisma by themselves and with each other. That is like, it's like selling the worst thing possible so hard so it comes out as an even 5 out of 10. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I was watching it in completely neutral, knowing that the script was terrible and these actors are hilarious.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh,
it's weird. And I think again a lot about Taika Waititi and Thor and Hunt for the Wilder People and all of his films. And in terms of like that banter, I think there's a thing that he does, and maybe he's just kind of found the opportunity to do it in, particularly in Thor, where the banter plays off both the actor and character in its best possible way. And he kind of makes those like they're not very long, but they just get the exact point across. And what happens here in this film is that they're really long, and they don't seem to play into what the distinctions between who these people really are.
The only distinctions they play into are the physical ones, where The Rock is big and Jason Statham is small.
That, and I think as well, the best time, when it works the best is that the banter really cuts to the heart of like the other person's insecurity. Like it actually like gets through, and that's why it's pissing them off. You know, like and I never got to see like for Jason Statham's character, for sure, the trigger point is his sister. and like otherwise they're just it's basically your mama jokes where you're not really.
It was all your mama jokes.
Where you're not really hurting the other person, you're just trying to be cleverer.
Yeah.
And I think to me where it really lands, for example, in Thor and the Hulk, is that they're undercutting each other's masculinity by such a degree that it's really, you feel that they're actually really kind of hurt by the things they're saying, but they're able to put a brave face on it. And in Hobbs and Shaw, I don't think there's none of that sort of. This is the thing with the ticking time bomb thing as well. It's just that there's no undercurrent to this. It's just all like, here's a ticking time bomb. Don't worry. Don't try to think too much about it.
Yeah, surface.
And here's some banter between these two guys. Don't try to think too much about it.
But I wish because the film does revel in these moments.
Yeah.
Like I wish that had like another 2 weeks in a writer's room. Like
Right.
I just feel like you could have really polished that up and made it like as enjoyable as the rest of the film.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the minor continuation of this issue is like this does what all the Fast and the Furiouses do, that the people who have misunderstandings like instantly after the 2/3 point in the film in one battle become brothers.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like these people are supposed to hate each other, and now all of a sudden they're like total besties.
So here's the thing. Again, I'm pointing out a lot of things that I think are problematic with this film or wrong, like just don't quite work. But there are two things that really work for me in this movie. And the one is that I think, like ultimately what this film is like the spike that is being shot into our arm with the virus at the beginning. The movie is a delivery mechanism for spectacle.
Yes.
Right? And unlike, for example, my issues with John Wick 3, which kind of delivered the same spectacle over and over again and kind of got me a little bit nauseated, this delivered enough varied spectacle that I was able to enjoy what I was being presented with. The second thing is, I think the thematic through line, there are many thematic through lines through this film, most of which don't work or don't really make any sense. But there is one in this that I think there's enough credence played to it that actually kind of does make sense. Even if it is cheesy and silly, it's there enough and kind of played with enough sincerity that I was like, okay, that's what the film's about. I get it. You did it. Good job. And that is this idea of brotherhood and family. It's what's in all of these films, but it's the, like Hobbs has his brother that he needs to reconcile with. Shaw has his sister that she needs to reconcile with. And then Hobbs and Shaw need to realize that ultimately they're brothers too. It's not great. It's not emotionally resonant, but it plays.
The thing that's interesting is like all of the gripes we've sort of talked about before, other than the family stuff for me, like the movie is the type of movie and spending enough time on the things where like you roll past it and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. This isn't that important. So we don't need to spend as much time on it. We're just going to keep going, spectacle.
Yeah.
But family stuff, and when it tries to become an emotional thing, I think you do need a little more connective tissue. Like, I think this does lean a little hard on less sort of what this film is setting up as what's important and more on what the franchise itself sets up as more important.
Right.
I just feel like there were some moments. I actually thought that Jason Statham and Vanessa Kirby had really nice brother-sister chemistry in the scenes where they were allowed to stop flying out of windows.
Right.
But like, I don't know. There was just, I never had a problem with, I thought The Rock and his family was handled well. I thought Jason Statham and his family was handled well. I thought the insta shift with Hobbs and Shaw, they never had a come to Jesus moment or like whatever with one another. Like, I think it was supposed to be Russia.
Well, yeah, I think, and then when they go to Samoa, they realize that they have respective, basically, Shaw gets to see that Hobbs has a family and has kind of the similar problems that he has, and they decide together that this is how we're going to solve the problem together.
I think, you know what, and maybe it's more about, again, I go back to a scripting issue, because I think it's like literally the use of like instantly during a fight calling each other brother when they've literally just called each other shitheads for the entire time. Like, it was that 180 of dialogue.
Right.
Maybe not timing of how it actually went down. Anyway.
I love, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the last problem that I have with Hobbs and Shaw is it's really starting to get dangerous into Taken 3 territory with the editing choices in some of these action scenes.
Right. Like, do you mean like it's
11 cuts to get over a fence?
Right, yeah.
The scene I'm talking about, for those of you who don't know, in Taken 3, Liam Neeson has to run away from something and he's hopping over a fence, and they literally cut 11 times because Liam Neeson can't hop over a fence.
Right.
I don't think that Jason Statham and The Rock can't do. I think this was like stunts. I think this is a deliberate choice of shaky cam quick cut.
Yeah.
And I think it maybe it also was affected my viewing of it because I saw it in IMAX and it was huge and obviously wasn't shot in IMAX.
Yeah.
But like that sort of action did not. I never sort of like that as much as say I like the John Wick sort of like where you can see everything going on.
Yeah.
So that I mean, again, that's a opinion or a taste of mine. Did that bother you at all, or did you be fine with that?
It didn't bother me so much in that I think this was sort of consistent with what I expect, having only seen one of the Fast and the Furious franchise film. It's consistent with what I expected that film to be. I wonder if, like the conversation about The Rock and Jason Statham's contracts about who can get beat up the most, is how much there's a conversation around how much we can actually vary up the look of these films. Because I wonder if you get into, and you bring in the director, the uncredited director of John Wick 1, if you get into a situation where you do sort of fully choreographed, fighting sequences, whether that look kind of feels like it would just be out of place. Maybe it'll work.
That makes sense.
I wonder if that's the case. It didn't. I agree with you that there is a cuttiness to this, which is sort of atypical of these kinds of films, but it didn't like jump out at me. There was one scene right at the very beginning where I noticed that where Vanessa Kirby jumps over a box, and then the next scene, the box is gone and she's like on top of someone else. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, is this what the movie's going to be like? But, it is a CG spectacle with enough stuff blowing up at any given point that I was like, yeah, this is what it is. And I'm in this case, again, it's a delivery mechanism for those kinds of scenes. And there was enough variances in those kinds of scenes that I was okay with it.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. This is my final question to you. Is it a movie?
Is it a movie? That's a really good question, actually.
I mean, it's a pretty easy answer.
It's a more complicated question than I think you're giving it credit for.
Nope.
Yeah, it is. It is a more complicated question.
I feel like we had a lot of really nice. We would have to have the reverse journey of Hobbs and Shaw, where we were agreeing with each other a lot, and now we need to end on a contentious note. It is a movie.
So why'd you ask me?
Well, I want to see how you, because tell me, I think you'll say possibly that it's not a movie, and I'd like to hear the reason why you think that might be, if that is the way that you're leading.
I think it's barely a movie, but it's
on the scale of movie to zero.
Here's the thing: what you're doing, which is that you're making it a binary question.
It is a binary question.
I don't actually think it is a binary question.
Oh, that's a bigger conversation.
Yeah. Anyway,
I like barely a movie though. I like that. I think
it's barely a movie, but it hangs together. Like I think this actually hangs together for what it is. And there's a couple other things I just wanted to get to, which was one, I really enjoyed Idris Elba in this. I think Idris Elba is the kind of actor that could jump into this, chew scenery, and then get out
and
jump out of this thing as quickly as possible and do something else. And I think that, like as much as these guys don't want to come off as being the villain, I think Charlize Theron in the last one proved that point as well, which is like the best role to take is the villain role. Do it, chew scenery, like really ham it up, and then get the fuck out.
Yeah, well, she's in, I think, the next two, though.
Oh, is she?
I think she's an overarching villain. I think that's what
God.
yeah. Okay. And I'm wondering
if she's the voice?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Or if that's going to be Hobbs's wife, like something weird like about that, like the mother of Hobbs's daughter.
Okay.
Something like that. Or
wait, what? No, she can't be the mother of Hobbs's daughter. She was fighting him in The Fate and the Furious.
She was fighting him.
Yeah.
What?
In The Fate and the Furious.
No. Sorry, I'm not saying they're. I'm saying if they're different people. So, for instance, I'm saying here's what I think the voice is.
You think Charlize Theron? Oh, you think?
I have a couple opinions. I have a couple ideas.
Okay.
The voice could be Charlize Theron's character from Fast 8.
Okay.
The voice could be the actual. We've never seen The Rock's ex-wife, I believe, who he has the daughter with. It could be that person because that seems like a family tie that they would do. Or
she's a supervillain trying to destroy.
Why not? Or it could be The Rock's father who abandoned his family.
Okay.
So there's a lot of interesting, and I use hard air quotes.
Yeah, I guess I don't see anything in there that would make that make sense. Like the one that everyone's talking about is if the voice is Han.
Oh shit, that's cool.
Right?
But it makes no sense. None of them would make sense.
Right.
But these movies have never made sense. I mean, if you look at how Jason Statham's character was introduced after he murders Han.
Right.
And then he goes in the beginning of his first movie and murders an entire hospital. And now we're rooting for him.
Right.
So
it's like if the Joker became the hero of the next Batman movie.
Yeah,
right?
but was so suave about it, no one gave a shit.
Yeah. The only other thing I kind of want to mention here is that Jason Statham and Vanessa Kirby being siblings is a little. He's like 50-something years old, and she's like 30. Which means that she was 20 when she was a kid.
Right.
So there's flashback scenes where they're
both similar
the
age.
same age, and I was like, okay, I get like this. I'm not sure what we're trying to say here. Like either Vanessa Kirby's really old or Jason Statham is much younger.
I think they'd want that one. I think they'd want him being much younger.
So he's like 30, like like full on grown wrinkled man. Anyway.
No, you're right. You're right.
I like Jason Statham. I like The Rock. I like Vanessa Kirby. I like the delivery mechanism. I think this plot is completely nonsensical and it's ridiculous, but it's it's wrapped in a package of being somewhat tongue-in-cheek, and I think that comes through that banter, even though the banter didn't work. And then I liked very much the trip to Samoa.
Yeah.
And like the cultural heritage that this sort of film kind of plays in.
You didn't watch the trailers, right?
Did not watch it.
So you didn't know they were going to Samoa.
I knew they were going to Samoa.
Damn it! That was the part I was hoping that would be a surprise, because I knew it was a surprise for no one.
No, I mean I've seen images of the film, so
shit.
I knew.
I was like, that would have been such a nice surprise.
Also, it's set up at the very beginning of the film where like The Rock is basically, she's like, I don't know the rest of my the family tree.
Sure, but
and he's like, oh, my brother, we had this beef. I will say this as well. It's continuously proven that Cliff Curtis is the most ethnically ambiguous brown man that you will ever have. Cliff Curtis is plays the brother, and he's played almost every ethnicity in Hollywood at this point. He is Maori. He's from New Zealand. He's played Pakistani. He's played Indian. He's played Mexican. He's now played Samoan. Cliff Curtis can do any brown man you need.
Okay,
which I always do. He is an incredible actor, by the way. If you've ever seen any of his work outside of this, I mean, even his work in like The Insider, where he plays one of the Ayatollahs.
Oh wow,
he's completely disappears in that role. I think he's fantastic in Training Day, where he plays a Mexican gangster.
Yep.
He's so good. And then, obviously he comes from Once Were Warriors, which is New Zealand's famous film. He did a film a couple years ago called Dark Horse, which I haven't seen. He's phenomenal. He's really good friends. He has a production company with Taika Waititi as well.
Oh, nice.
So they're all connected.
I that's very cool to know. I also want to give a shout out to Idris Elba, who was just on one of my favorite internet series, Hot Ones.
What is the Wings?
The Wings thing. Yeah. He had a very endearing, fun episode of Hot Ones, and you should check that out because it was awesome.
He's come a long way from Stringer Bell, is all I got to say.
Yeah.
And he has a show. It's weird. I think he's one of those guys that's trying to figure out like what his role is, because he's got this show on Netflix that I think is like closely echoes his real life, which he plays a Brixton DJ who moonlights as a
Brixton.
baby. Yeah, his name. He's from. I'm not sure if he's from Brixton or Brighton, but he's from that area. He plays a DJ because Idris Elba's really into music.
He is. He was on Jay-Z's. He introed the last Jay-Z album.
Oh, did he?
Yeah,
I didn't know
like
that.
he sent him like some poetry or something. He's like, hey, something or other, and then he was talking about it in the Hot Ones episode. He goes, yeah, and Jay-Z emailed me back. He's like, yeah, I don't like this. I fucking love it. And he's
really?
And so like he does the intro.
Oh, and he's really into house music.
Yeah.
He's really into electronica. So he has that, that other show, which I don't think did that well. Fantastic in Beasts of No Nation. And the thing I think I remember, I'm just thinking about him so much right now in terms of, he played Stringer Bell, like, I think it was like 10 to 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And he seems much older in that show than he does now. Like, he seems like a young man now. But in when he was playing Stringer Bell, he played him feeling much older.
Yeah.
And it's I don't know.
That's a hard thing to pull off.
It's a hard thing to pull off. I think he's got a huge career. Can do no wrong at this point, except apparently Mandela, which I heard wasn't that good. He played Nelson Mandela. Yeah.
Well, this has been the only podcast about Fast and Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw. That's right. This is the only episode of the podcast where I'll make two mouth air horn noises because we need one for Hobbs and one for Shaw.
For Shaw.
Shahir, when you are not smuggling viruses out of the country via commercial airlines after getting cavity searched when I accidentally, quote unquote, stick the TSA on you, where can folks find you?
You can see me using my fake passport, which is Mike Hawksmall. Is that Mike Hawksmall?
Like
www.mikeoax. No, Shahir Daud. It's SHAHIRDAUD.com. Matt, when you are What are you doing this week? I actually, I'm at a loss. You're in the middle. You're jumping straight down the line of a 5 out of 10 when you are not cutting 2 pieces of stone into 2. Where can people find you?
I have no idea. You can find me very confused at what you just said. MATGHEWKROL.com for my life and works. Also, Skeldron, the number 4, PREZ on Instagram, or PSN, or Emperor, MSK on Twitter. Also, go check out the good works we are doing over Extra Credits. We just finished up our Joan of Arc series, and so we got all 5 parts up there. We actually, oh my gosh, is it today? We are releasing our Hogs in History episode.
Is this in relation to feral hogs?
No, but it timed out real well. So go check that out. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Please email us in with any thoughts about Hobbs and Shaw or any other films you'd like to talk about at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or onlymoviepod on the Twitter box. Next week, we'll be back with another movie.
We don't know what it is.
We don't know what it is. You know what? We like keeping you on your toes.
Toes.
That's how we're ending it?
Yeah, we're just going to go with toes.
Toes.
Toes.